feel as prepared as possible when you're facing an interview. You may have just started out in the process. It might be the job of your dreams. Regardless of what it is, even if it's just quote unquote practice for you, it's important that you put your best foot forward into this interview process. And really the foundation is preparation, and I'm not going to bore you anymore with how strongly I feel about that. And I think any other career coach would be bound to agree with me that preparation is very important. Before we talk about interviewing, and more importantly preparing for an interview, I'm sharing some of the information about myself on your screen in the form of a slide share, and hopefully you can see it fine. I'm an occupational consultant. I've worked as a vocational counselor, corporate manager, and career coach my entire life. I've always been in the business of helping people find their path in their career and to get work and to be happy at work, most importantly. And that's what I'm passionate about, and I really enjoyed helping folks like yourself find work and do their best in that next interview. Perhaps even better than the last interview, because you do learn a little bit as you go. In any event, here are some free resources for you. Please take advantage of them. You can read articles on my blog on jobsearchfortherestofus.com, more information about me and my company on lifeworks.info, and of course you can reach out and connect with me via Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. I also write for Career Realism and Examiner.com, and write career-related articles for both those organizations, and I'm proud to do so and happy to do so. Both are very good organizations to be affiliated with, and I do enjoy being with them. Now, really, when I talk about preparing for an interview, I'm really saying over-prepare for an interview. You really want to start by knowing yourself, your skills, your work history, your education, and your industry in general. Know them inside and out. If you're not working, you don't have anything better to do but to be as up on all of this stuff as you can. I know it takes time to apply for jobs, not taking away from that. But really, if you're not working, your job is looking for work, and a large part of that is being overly familiar and very knowledgeable in what you have to offer an employer. Nobody's going to sell you better than yourself, and you need to know your skills and your work history and your education in order to be able to do that. In order to sell yourself even further and show your value to an employer, you really have to know about your industry. And I don't care what level of job you're seeking, if it's the lowest clerk, janitor level, and think of the lowest level position in your field, even if that's it, there's no reason not to know about your industry. If you're applying for a custodian job at McDonald's, if you want to move up and you want to have a chance of beating out somebody else who may already know what McDonald's is looking for in their custodians or janitors, then you should be up on that. I'm exaggerating slightly to make a point, but really, if you want the job, you really do need to do your homework and really know yourself and your industry inside and out. Whether you're looking to keep your job, grow in your career, or find a new job, you really need to take your current job and your career seriously. And even if it's a job you hate, you really need to do your best. You're there for some reason, even if it's just to pay the bills. If you think, your job is safe, I think you really need to think again, because nobody's position in today's economy is safe necessarily. It goes without saying, and you probably already know, that I share a lot of articles and information about working and careers and business. And at a party recently, one of my friend's husbands commented to me and said, "Wow, I wish that I had something I was as passionate about as you are about working and careers." I thanked him, but I really felt like asking, really, you have a job too. Aren't you passionate about that? About finding a new one at least? Nothing? You're not that passionate about anything? And you know, a lot of people aren't. They go to work, they show up, they go through the motions, report on time, and that's just not good enough in today's market. It's not. And really, if you don't like your job that much, then you need to look at how to make this terrible job that you hate a stepping stone. At the very least, you know, it can be a reference for you going forward when you apply for another job. So think about that. You should always have a current resume on hand and ready to go. And this will help you to really focus on what skills you have, what abilities you have. You know, make sure your dates are right on your resume. Make sure you know those and are comfortable discussing those so that when you do get an interview, you are going to answer those kind of questions very, very well. Go through your resume and look at it, each sentence, and pretend you're the employer and they ask you about each sentence in your resume. Well, can you tell me about a time when you did this sentence? Or what did you mean by this sentence? And really analyze it and think about it. What do you like about your current job? Is there anything you like? What don't you like? How about your other jobs? You know, what did you accomplish at each of those, and what are your challenges? These are some of the things that you want to be prepared to answer and to discuss and to really know about so that you can be prepared to talk with each employer that you interview with and really explore in depth how you could benefit the company. And again, you're your own salesman. No one else is going to sell you to this employer for this particular job. If you don't know the answer to these questions, you really need to stop and think about it. What are you looking for in your next job? That's important for you to know, and you can figure that out by answering some of the previous questions. What didn't you like about your previous jobs or this current job? What would you change? What would you like to see in an employer that would be different, that would allow you to do your job better or to benefit your employer more? And really, in the end, that's what employers want to hear. They want to hear that how you're going to benefit them in an interview, certainly. They want to know what can you do for them. Everyone, in fact, wants to know that, whether they come right out and say it or not. People want to know what's in it for me. If you can answer that question even before the interviewer has a chance to ask it directly, then you're going to have a better chance of moving on to the next interview. And that's most likely what you want if you're taking the time to prepare for and participate in this current interview. Skip forward a page. Let me try to go back here. Now, as part of preparing, or really over-preparing, you do want to read about how to answer interview questions. There are plenty of articles and books out there. I've written quite a few on my blog and on Career Realism and on Examiner.com. There's other very fine career coaches that have done the same. Take advantage of the free resources and information that are out there and think about how you would answer each of these questions. You know, I have a lot of clients kind of fight me on this next point and say to me, you know, Mary, why do I need to write down all my answers? Why is that important? I can remember my answers. I mean, it's just like 1, 2, 3. Well, you can't improve on them or know about the improvements that you've decided upon if you don't have them written down. And that's why I really do recommend that you write them down. First off, so that you can edit and hone them in such a way as they're going to be the best answer that you can give to this question for this job. So if you write it down, and you'll probably rewrite the answers a number of times, as you do that, you'll also be remembering your answers, and you'll be a lot more fluid when you go to answer questions in the future. If you read, write, and hear anything, that's going to help you remember the information. That's an old study skills tip that I learned actually as a tutor in college. You know, it's 3 parts to learning anything. It's going to stick a lot more than if you just do one part. So you want to read, you want to write, and you want to hear. So even say the questions out loud to yourself, even before practicing with someone else, maybe. But you do want to practice with someone else. If you need to, start out on the phone. Ask the person to ask you questions as an employer would. You might need to do this a few times even on the phone before you move to doing it in person. The phone versus in-person practice will make a big difference, and you do want to do both if you can. At least one practice in person will really help boost your confidence, but at least a few sessions on the phone with somebody that you trust. You'd be surprised. I can't count the number of times my clients have said, if I'd known it was this inexpensive, I would have hired a career coach long ago. It's the best X number of dollars I've ever spent. And if I'd made that investment sooner, I might have gotten the job sooner. So think about that. At least investigate the cost and weigh that out. It can really benefit you in the long run. If you can't afford a career coach, you don't want to go the hour commitment to practice interviewing skills, at least one session. At least practice with someone whose opinion and judgment you trust, who you feel like you can really value what they're going to tell you in terms of feedback, and that they're going to give a lot of thought to what you need to do your best during an interview. That's very important. And again, it'll, if nothing else, contribute to your confidence level during the interview. And I guess if there's anything that this first tip does for you, it gives you a boost of confidence. It really does. And you know, to be successful in an interview and to come across as a excellent potential candidate, you want to be confident, appear confident. You don't want to stumble on your words. You don't want to have to backtrack, re-explain something, clarify anything. You want to really go into the interview knowing that you are the best candidate for the job so that you can convince the employer for the job. That having been said, it is super important to do the other piece of the research, which is in researching the employer. Research the company, certainly, you know, so go beyond that industry knowledge that you have and research the actual company. If you can, research the interviewers. LinkedIn is a wonderful tool for this. You can often drill down to the local company, even if it's a national company, and find out who the managers are, who the key personnel are, by looking on LinkedIn. How many of their employees are on LinkedIn can be a good indicator of the company overall and can really give you a lot of information there. So you really want to do that. You want to practice answering questions that apply to that company. Glassdoor and other sites will often give you questions and answers specific to that company, and again, we'll drill deeper than just the industry that you're within. So you really want to be prepared to talk about and speak to those things that are specific to that particular company and or that particular employer representative, so that you look like the best candidate for the job. That's the trick in the end. That's what you want to do. You want to communicate how you're going to benefit that employer and why you are the absolute best candidate for the job. You know, of course, I have a lot more tips to share with you. I guess the last one in terms of preparation would be to make sure that you have questions prepared in advance to ask the employer. There is nothing worse than a dead silence when the employer asks the question, do you have any questions for us? And you can hear a pin drop. That's not a good way to present to the employer. So really think hard in advance about what you can ask. Your research will probably yield some questions that you can ask the employer at the end of the interview. During the interview, you may think of a couple of questions, but you may not. So be prepared with some questions to ask ahead of time. One thing that always works is to ask the interviewer, well, what brought you to work for this company? What do you like best about working for the company? Is there any advice that you would have for somebody like myself that is looking for this type of position, or any information that you would feel like it's important that I know? If you can stomach it, and hopefully you can, because you can get some good information, ask for feedback about how you did during the interview. It can be something as simple as, if you don't mind, give me a little feedback about how I did on the interview. If not at this moment, if you could take the time to email me, I'd really appreciate it. That does a couple of things for you. It shows that, you're interested in not only this opportunity, but improving yourself and gaining knowledge and doing your best, and that you're thoughtful, and that you can take positive feedback and do something with it. So, asking for feedback, yes, I know it's hard, it really is, but it can benefit you. It can not only give you actual information that can benefit you in the future, but it can really show the employer what kind of metal you're made of, and communicate to them how confident you are, and how you can carry yourself in a mature and responsible manner, and that you're thoughtful and really put your all into everything you do, from the very first interview to every task that they're going to ask you to do. So that gives them a very good idea of who you are as a person. One of my clients has mentioned to me that they've actually asked in the past, and so far it's worked to date, that their question is, well, when can I start? That's not for everybody, and you really have to have some confidence to be able to carry that off well, and in a way that's going to benefit you. But if you have that connection there, and you really want that particular job, you're going to get a good response, if not a job offer. I will guarantee you with that question and answer. So if you could pull it off, by all means, please do so. And it could pay off for you. Really, overall, the biggest piece of advice beyond over preparing for an interview is to, take that comfort and the confidence that you get from over preparing, and approach the interview as if it was a conversation. And you can just, make it a give and take, and think of it as if you're having a conversation instead of an interview, and have it be an interrogation. You don't want that. So by over preparing, gives you not only the information that you need to do well during the interview, it'll give you a sense of confidence that is going to have you present very well to the employer, and it will really be a big benefit to you if you take the time to do that. So don't just prepare, over prepare. And let's go back through each of the slides very quickly and just talk about some of the key points that you need to remember in over preparing, not just preparing. You want to remember that, even if you have a current job, that nobody's job is safe. You want to be ready, you want to be prepared with a resume, and even to answer interview questions. Do not wait till the last minute. I sometimes get calls, and it makes me cringe. The day before a big interview, people will call and say, Mary, I just need, I need to do a practice interview with you right now. Okay, I could do that, certainly, but you would have benefited more from my help if we'd started, even before you got a call for the interview, because you want to have enough time to be ready for that interview. I can do a practice session with you, and I can give you feedback that's going to help you, but you're going to do 100 times better if you start now, even before you're called for an interview. So don't wait. Start reading up now. Read about how to answer interview questions in your field and in general. You want to understand that you're going to need to practice a few times. This is not something you do the night before an interview. You're not cramming for a test here. This is your life. This is a job you really want. So it's going to take some time to practice and to perfect your presentation. You're going to have a lot more self-esteem again if you over-prepare than if you don't. You want to know about the position. You want to know about all of your qualifications, of course, but you also want to know about the company and the industry as well. My contact information and some additional resources here on the screen for you. I'm happy to help you. If I can answer any questions by email, free, I'm always happy to do so. I am in a business though, so I do charge for some of my services, needless to say, but I'm available by chat, email, Skype, or Hangout. You can visit my blog, jobsearchfortherestofus.com, or my website, which is life-works.info, and find the best way to connect with me, whatever's comfortable for you. I'm here to help. I'm happy to help. We still do have a couple minutes left, so I'm going to answer a couple of questions that I've received in the recent past that may be helpful to you as well. Let's see if we can keep one relative to interviewing. How do I explain an employment gap in an interview? Well, hopefully, you've addressed it in your resume to such an extent that it won't be an issue during the interview. But you want to be honest. Always be honest on your resume and with an employer in an interview. Be prepared, though. Again, it goes back to your preparation. If you do have a gap, think about what is that gap a result of. It may be straightforward, a layoff, something like that. It may be a little less straightforward. Maybe a family member needed you to assist them with their care. Maybe your mother or grandmother was hospitalized or put in assisted living, and you had to take some time off to manage some family responsibilities. You may have taken off time to raise your children. A lot of women and even men these days have taken off a couple of years to be a family care provider, and absolutely nothing wrong with that. But be prepared to show how that adds value to your current desire to return to the workforce, but more importantly to the employer. How did that experience benefit you, and how will that make you a better worker, and why should the employer look at that as a positive instead of a negative? Again, that's always the trick. You're selling yourself during the interview. So you want to be prepared, just like any good salesman, with the key points of why the employer wants to hire you. What's in it for them? Again, that's what you want to be able to communicate very clearly to the employer, better than anyone else. You can do that by over-preparing. Always put a positive spin on anything. Try very hard to avoid saying anything negative and explaining away anything. Don't apologize for being a stay-at-home mother or for having taken care of a family member in a time of need. Do say what you learned from that and how it applies to your work going forward, and how that experience will even further benefit the employer, because again, that is what they need to know. They need to hear from you why it is important that they hire you and not somebody else, because there is going to be somebody else. It's likely going to even be between you and several other people. So make yourself stand out by over-preparing and thus feeling more confident and having the answers that you need for this employer in all the key tips and points that you need to discuss with the employer to convince him or her that you're the person for this job. It starts with you. You have to believe it first, and then you can sell it to the employer. If you find out during the course of an interview that it's not a match for you, still do the best job you can in that interview, because it's going to be really good practice for the next interview that you have with a job that is a good match for you. So don't just kind of throw up your arms in the middle of the interview if you find out at a certain point, oh, this isn't the job for me. At the very least, use it as practice. You know, make some mental notes, if not jotting down actual notes for yourself about how you can use this experience and what you've learned from it to improve the next time you do have an interview. So hopefully I'll hear from you if you need to practice interviewing. Next week I'm going to talk about my next tip in the interview process, and I'll share that with you during this week. So look for my posts on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. I do have a group on LinkedIn for job search right now you might want to check out. And the links here on this final slide, I will include the link to this presentation in this posting of this video, and share that in all of those good places as well, so that you can come back and access that. And if you'd like, join me on LinkedIn for my job search group. Just a place to get some support and resources, ask questions. Hopefully I'll hear from you between now and next week, when we'll talk more about interviewing. But if not, and you'd like to send your questions, I'll be happy to address them as well. Otherwise, I'll see you at 11 o'clock next Friday, which is the 2nd of May already, right here on Google Hangouts. I hope you make it a great day, and let me know if I can help you with anything at all in the meantime. lifeworks@mail.com.